The rope burned my wrists raw, and Annie's cry, sharp, small, like a sparrow caught in a trap, cut through the crowd's murmurs. I stood on the gallows, my daughters' faces blurring in the dust, and felt the truth clawing up my throat. I stole that bread, and I would steal it again. But someone was watching, not with hate, but with a quiet power that could unravel everything. The plank beneath my boots creaked, unsteady as my pulse. My dress, threadbare and patched, clung to my skin, heavy with sweat and the dry grit of this unforgiving town. The wind carried the scent of sun-baked earth and the crowd's sour breath. They stood below, faces hard, eyes narrowed, farmers, shopkeepers, mothers who once nodded to me in the market. Now they stared like I was a stain on their conscience. Sheriff Amos Ward stood at the front, arms crossed, his badge glinting like a blade. "She knew better," he barked, voice flat as the horizon. "No excuse for theft, bread or not." I lifted my chin, not for pride, but for my girls. Sarah, 12, held Annie tight, her jaw set like she could will me free. Grace, 10, whispered prayers, her fingers twisting the hem of her smock. Emma, 7, glared at the crowd, fists balled. Lily, 5, pressed her face into Sarah's side, trembling. And Annie, barely 3, sobbed that high, gasping cry that tore my heart clean through. They were caged in a wagon behind the gallows, 5 small heads barely above the railing. I stole to fill their bellies, 1 loaf, 1 mistake. And now the town wanted my life. The executioner stepped forward, his hand on the lever. My knees buckled, but I locked them, refusing to fall. Not yet. I glanced at Pastor Ellis, pale and clutching his Bible, lips moving in silent pleas. He would not save me. No one would. The plank shifted again, and I whispered, "I am not sorry." The wind swallowed my words. Then a voice broke the air, quiet but steady from the crowd's edge. "I will take her." Not a shout, not a plea, just spoken, like offering a coin for a bushel of wheat. Heads turned. Sheriff Ward's eyes narrowed. I squinted through the dust as a man pushed forward, slow and deliberate. Tall, broad-shouldered, his flannel shirt faded from sun and work. His hat sat low, shadowing his face, but his steps were sure, boots scuffing the dirt. Nathan Holt. Everyone knew him. Owned the cedar mill beyond the ridge, lived alone in that big timber house since his wife died years back. No children. No kin. "She broke the law," Ward warned, voice sharp. "No adoption paper fixes that." Nathan kept walking. "Consider it a debt paid. I will settle what she owes. Bread, rope, time." His tone stayed calm, but his words carried weight. "You want a lesson, Sheriff?" "Let it be that mercy feeds more mouths than punishment." Whispers rippled through the crowd, soft as grass bending. Ward pressed, "She stole." Nathan stopped below the gallows, looking up at me. His eyes were gray, steady, like stone worn smooth by a river. "She has paid more than any thief in this town." The pastor's hands shook. "God forgives," he stammered. "We should too." "I do not forgive," Ward muttered. "You do not have to," Nathan said. "But you do not get to play God either." Silence fell, heavy as the noose around my neck. Ward stared at me, his jaw tight. "You sure you want this man speaking for you?" I swallowed, throat dry as ash. I do not know him, but he did not stand quiet and watch. My voice cracked. "That is more than most." The rope was cut. I collapsed to my knees, breath jerking into my lungs like a blade pulled free. The crowd murmured, some angry, some relieved. Nathan offered a hand, dirt-stained, calloused, the hand of a man who worked alone. I stared at it, my wrists still burning, then took it. He pulled me up, his grip firm but not rough. We said nothing as the girls were released from the wagon. Sarah flew to me first, arms around my waist, her sob muffled in my skirt. Grace came next, face buried in my side. Emma and Lily pressed close, and Annie clung to my leg, whimpering. I held them all, my hands trembling, my heart too full to speak. Nathan waited, his shadow long in the dusk. The townsfolk dispersed, muttering about justice and mercy, about lines blurred and whether Nathan was a fool or a saint. No one followed as he led us to his wagon. We moved like ghosts, 6 frightened souls trailing a man who had not spoken more than 20 words. The ride to his ranch was silent, save for Annie's soft hiccups and the creak of old wheels. The land rolled wide and green, cedar groves dark against the fading sky. His house stood square and plain, built for a family that never came. White curtains fluttered in the upper windows, smoke curled from the chimney. "Come inside," Nathan said, voice low. The girls hesitated, eyes wide. I nodded, and they followed. Inside, the air smelled of pine and bread, real bread. Nathan set out bowls of soup, stale but warm, and bread thick with butter. I did not eat. I watched my daughters. Sarah gave Annie the best piece, her hands steady despite her red eyes. Grace whispered prayers before each bite. Emma scraped her bowl clean, licking her fingers when she thought I was not looking. Lily ate slowly, eyes darting to Nathan, who sat at the table's end, silent. Later, when the girls were asleep in quilts by the fire, I stood in the kitchen doorway. "You did not have to do that?" I said. Nathan looked up from his chair, hands resting on his knees. "I know. You do not even know my name." "I do now. Hannah, is it not?" I nodded once. He looked down at his hands, calloused and scarred. "Do not expect repayment. I did not save you for thanks." "Why then?" My voice was sharp, edged with distrust. He paused, staring at the fire. "I lost my wife to sickness 7 years back. We tried for children. Never came. Doctor said it was not possible." He stopped, then met my eyes. Today, 5 girls were about to lose their mother over a crust of bread. I could not walk away. I crossed my arms. "I am not your wife. My girls are not yours. They do not have to be." He stood slowly. "They are safe. That is what matters." I studied his face, worn, kind, uncertain. "Why now?" He stared at the fire a long while. "Some days you cannot keep your back turned anymore." A floorboard creaked above us. We both looked up, Sarah likely always sleeping light. "She will have questions," I said. "Let her ask. I do not have answers. Maybe they do not need them tonight." I turned away, heart heavy and strange. Mercy was not something I trusted. Not yet. That night, I lay awake by the fire, my daughters curled around me, their breaths soft and uneven. The house was warm, solid, but it was not mine. I listened to its sounds, creaking beams, the wind against the shutters, and wondered if it would hold us or crush us. As I drifted toward sleep, a faint sound came from the porch, the soft scrape of a knife on wood. I rose, silent, and peered through the window. Nathan sat under the lantern, carving something small, his hands steady. A toy, maybe, for Annie. My chest tightened. Hope was dangerous, but it was there, flickering, like the light in his hands. The air was wrong when I woke, too thick for a ranch in waking hours. My eyes snapped open, blinking against the pale light seeping through the curtains. My daughters lay tangled beside me on the quilts, their breaths soft but uneven. Annie had wormed her way onto my chest in the night, her small hand clenched in my dress. I held still, savoring the warmth of her, until the front door creaked. My heart leapt. I slid Annie gently to the quilt and rose, stepped silent over the floorboards, pulse hammering. Through the window, I saw Nathan in the doorway, hat in hand, staring across the field toward the road. Dust rose faintly, a single rider approaching. "Someone is coming," he said without turning. I squinted past his shoulder. The figure was distant, but the horse's gait was deliberate, unhurried. "Sheriff Ward?" My voice was low, barely a whisper. Nathan's grip tightened on the doorframe. "Likely." I stepped back, my hands curling into fists. The gallows flashed in my mind, the ropes burn, the crowd's murmurs, Sarah's cry. I had thought we were done with him. The rider drew closer, and I saw the badge glinting on his chest. It was Ward. He did not dismount, one hand on the reins, the other resting on the holster at his side. "I am not here for blood," he called, voice carrying over the morning chill. "Then what do you want?" Nathan asked, stepping onto the porch. Ward tilted his hat back, eyes flicking to the house. "Just talking. You did a fine thing yesterday, Holt." Generous, noble, but folks are asking questions. "Cannot have it looking like you bought off a sentence. Looks bad on the law." Nathan's jaw tensed. "Looks worse hanging a mother of 5 over bread." Ward ignored that. "She staying long?" "As long as she needs." Ward nodded like he expected it. "Town's whispering. She has a brother, Caleb Morse." "You heard of him?" My breath stopped. Caleb. Not my brother by blood, but my late husband's cousin. A drifter, all sharp edges and sharper grudges. I stepped forward, half hidden by the curtain. Nathan did not answer, so Ward continued. "Trouble follows him like mud on boots. Word is he is looking for her, and he is not happy. He was not there when she needed bread, not the helping kind. Gets paid for silence, or to make noise, depending on who is paying." Nathan took a step down the porch. "Is that a warning?" "It is a fact." Ward's eyes met mine through the window, cold and steady. "You have 5 girls in there. 1 woman. All under your roof. You think that will go quiet?" "I do not care about whispers," Nathan said. "You should." Ward's voice was flat. "Some men whisper with fists." He turned his horse and rode off, leaving dust curling in his wake. I stepped onto the porch, my hands trembling. "You knew about Caleb?" Nathan asked, still watching the road. I hesitated, the memory of Caleb's voice clawing up my throat. "He stayed with us after my husband died, lingered. I never asked him to. He drank, gambled, brought trouble. I told him to leave." "He did not take it well." Nathan turned, his eyes searching mine. "Would he hurt you?" "He tried once." My voice cracked. I locked the girls in the cellar and stood him off with a poker. "That was when he called me a burden, said I had a mouth too sharp for a widow. And now he is looking for you." "I do not know." I gripped the railing, wood splintering under my nails. "But if he is, it is not to help." Nathan nodded once, then disappeared into the barn without a word. I stood there, the morning air cold against my skin, Caleb's name a weight in my chest. I had not spoken it in years, not since I packed the girls and fled that rotting shack we called home. He had wanted control, over me, over the girls, over the little we had left. I thought I had outrun him, but men like Caleb did not forget. The day passed heavy and slow. The girls explored the house cautiously, staying close to me. Sarah helped peel potatoes, her knife steady but her eyes darting to the windows. Grace found a stack of old books in the parlor, reading aloud in halting syllables while Lily and Annie listened, wide-eyed. Emma trailed me to the kitchen, her small hand brushing mine as if to make sure I was still there. I watched Nathan from the window while he worked, chopping wood with a rhythm that felt like punishment. Every swing was hard, clean, final. He did not ask questions, did not crowd me, but his presence was a quiet anchor. Still, I waited for the peace to break. That afternoon, Nathan called the girls outside. I followed, wary, as he knelt beside the barn, showing Sarah and Grace how to check snares along the tree line. "Rabbits move fast," he said, his voice low but patient. "You have to think faster." Sarah nodded, her brow furrowed, mimicking his movements. Grace hesitated, then copied her sister, her small hands clumsy but determined. Emma and Lily watched, clutching each other's sleeves, while Annie toddled after Nathan, tugging at his pant leg. He glanced down, a faint smile breaking his face, and handed her a stick to hold. My chest tightened. They were learning to trust him, and I was not sure I could. Back inside, I kneaded dough for supper, my hands moving on instinct while my mind churned. Caleb's face swam up, his crooked grin, the way his eyes gleamed when he drank, the night he slammed his fist into the wall an inch from my head. I had stood my ground then, poker raised, the girls sobbing behind the cellar door. I would do it again. But this time, I was not alone. Nathan's shadow fell across the doorway as he entered, wiping sweat from his brow. He looked at me, and I knew he saw the fear I could not hide. "You do not ask much," I said, breaking the silence. "If you want to tell me something, you will." He leaned against the counter, his hands still. I set the dough aside, wiping flour from my fingers. "Caleb is not just trouble. He is a debt that never gets paid. After my husband died, he said he would help. Instead, he drank our food, scared my girls, took what little we had. I ran because I had to." Nathan's eyes darkened, but he did not speak. I continued, the words spilling out. "He said I owed him, for his time, his patience, his kindness. He said the girls were his to claim if I did not pay. I told him they were never his. That was when he tried to hurt me." "And you stopped him," Nathan said, not a question. "I had to." My voice shook. "But he is not the kind to forget." Nathan nodded, slow and deliberate. "Then we watch. We prepare." I met his gaze, searching for judgment, but found none. "You do not have to fight my battles." "I am not fighting yours," he said quietly. "I am fighting theirs." He nodded toward the parlor, where the girls' laughter drifted through the wall. Something shifted in me then, a crack in the wall I had built around my heart. I did not trust easily, but Nathan's steadiness was hard to deny. I nodded, and he turned to leave, pausing at the door. "Supper smells good," he said, almost soft, then stepped outside. That night, I tucked the girls into their quilts, their faces flushed from the day. Sarah whispered, "Is it safe here, Mama?" I brushed her hair back, my throat tight. "Safer than before," I said, hoping it was true. When the house was quiet, I sat by the fire, the carved bear Nathan had given Annie clutched in my hand. Its edges were smooth, carved with care. I traced it with my thumb, my thoughts a tangle of hope and dread. Then it came, a knock at the door, slow and deliberate. My heart stopped. I rose, the bear slipping to the floor, and grabbed the kitchen knife from the counter. The knock came again, louder, and a voice slithered through the night. "Hannah, that you in there?" "Caleb." Caleb's voice slithered through the door, sharp and amused, like a blade catching moonlight. "Come on, Hannah. You going to pretend you do not remember me?" My hand tightened on the kitchen knife, its handle cold against my palm. The firelight flickered, casting shadows that danced across the walls. My daughters slept in the next room, their soft breaths a fragile thread holding me to this moment. I stepped toward the door, heart pounding but did not open it. "Go away," I said, voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Now that is not hospitable. Caleb's tone turned hard, and the door rattled under a heavy knock. You ran off with 5 kids, left me to clean up your mess. I lost money looking for you. You took my time, my patience, my kindness, he snarled, banging the door harder. I want what is mine. They were never yours. My voice rose, sharp as the knife I held. You drank our food, scared my girls. You owe me. The air went still. Then Caleb laughed, low and cruel. You always had a mouth, Hannah. Too sharp for a widow. Before I could answer, Nathan's voice cut through the night, calm but unyielding. She owes nothing. He stood outside, shotgun slung across his chest, his shadow long in the lantern's glow. I peered through the window, my breath catching. Caleb turned, hands raised, his grin faltering. You Holt? He asked. This is my land, Nathan said. Ride out now or I make this memory permanent. Caleb sneered. You think you can keep her safe? She is just another mouth. Nathan did not answer. He raised the shotgun, aimed at the ground beside Caleb's feet, and fired. The earth exploded in dust and noise. Caleb's horse reared and he stumbled, cursing. Go, Nathan said, voice like stone. Caleb scrambled onto his horse, coat flapping as he rode off, boots sliding in the dirt. I stood frozen, the knife still in my hand, until Nathan stepped inside. His eyes met mine, steady but tired. He will not come back tonight, he said. But he will come back, I whispered, setting the knife down. My hands shook. Men like Caleb do not forget. Nathan nodded, resting the shotgun against the wall. Then we will be ready. I wanted to believe him, but Caleb's voice echoed in my mind, dragging up memories of that night in the shack, his fist splintering the wall, Sarah's scream from the cellar. I had fought him off then, but now he knew where we were. The safety of this house felt like a lie, thin as the curtains fluttering in the breeze. I glanced toward the girls' room where Sarah's shadow stirred, her eyes glinting in the dark. She had heard everything. I forced a smile, but it felt hollow. The next morning I made breakfast with trembling hands, burning the eggs and oversalting the oats. The girls did not notice, laughing over their plates, but Nathan did. He took my wrist gently as I set a plate down, his touch warm and steady. You are not alone, he said, voice low. I nodded, pulling away, not ready to lean into his kindness. That afternoon, a stranger arrived. I saw him through the kitchen window, walking slow along the fence line, one hand in his pocket, the other swinging a long coat. Not Caleb, but something about him made my blood go cold. I dried my hands and stepped onto the porch. Nathan, I called. He emerged from the barn, wiping oil from his palms, his eyes narrowing as the man approached. Nathan Holt? The stranger asked, stopping 10 feet from the porch. Who is asking? Nathan replied. Name is Raven. Pinkerton Agency. He pulled a folded parchment from his coat. Looking for a woman named Hannah Carver. 5 daughters. Last seen heading west from Trinity Hollow. My breath caught. A detective. I stepped forward, heart racing. I am Hannah. Raven's eyes flicked to me, softening briefly. Ma'am, I do not mean harm. Someone is offering coin for your return. Man named Victor Langston. My stomach dropped. Victor. My husband's old business partner, a man with a smile like a snake and money to bend the law. That is not possible, I said, voice shaking. He was out of our lives after my husband died. Raven unfolded the parchment. He says he wants custody of your children. Claims they are not safe with you. They are safe with me, I snapped, stepping closer. He is not kin. Does not need to be, Raven said, voice low. He is a man with money and lawyers. That is enough in most courts. Nathan moved beside me, his presence solid. "You found us," he said. "Now leave." Raven folded the parchment, tipped his hat, and walked back the way he came. No threats, no warnings, but my knees buckled as he disappeared. Nathan caught me before I hit the steps. "Why now?" I whispered. "Why come for us now?" "Because someone does not like seeing you free," Nathan said, his voice hard. "They want control. The girls are just the price." I pulled away, my hands shaking. Victor Langston had tried to buy our land after my husband died. When I refused, he said I would regret it. I thought he had moved on, chasing bigger deals in bigger towns. But now he was back, using my daughters as pawns. I pressed my palms to my eyes, trying to steady my breath. Nathan watched me, silent, giving me space to break or to stand. I chose to stand. That night the barn burned. I woke to the smell of smoke, thick and choking, and the crackle of flames. I ran outside, my nightdress catching on the doorframe, and saw the barn swallowed in fire, orange tongues licking the sky. Nathan was already there, dragging the horses to safety, his face streaked with soot. The girls stumbled out behind me, Sarah coughing, Lily screaming. I pulled them back, shielding them from the heat. Nathan ran into the blaze, emerging with a handful of tools clutched to his chest, coughing hard. The barn collapsed, embers spiraling into the night. As the flames died to a smolder, I saw it, a note nailed to the charred doorframe. I tore it free, my hands shaking. The words were scrawled in crude ink. "Still not yours. Still not safe." My heart stopped. This was not Caleb. This was Victor, or his men, striking where we felt safest. I read the note once, then crumpled it, my nails digging into my palms. Nathan approached, his breath ragged. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," I said, voice flat. I walked back to the porch, clutching Annie so tight she whimpered. But it was not nothing. It was a promise of more to come. Inside, I sat by the fire, the girls curled around me, their questions unanswered. Nathan stood by the window, staring at the wreckage, his shoulders hunched. I knew he felt it too, the weight of a threat we could not outrun. But I was done running. I rose, careful not to wake the girls, and slipped into the bedroom. Under the mattress, wrapped in cloth, were the ledgers my husband had kept, Victor's bribes, his threats, a note where he admitted forging a signature to steal our land. I had been too afraid to use them before, certain no one would believe a poor widow. But fear had no place here now. I stepped back into the main room, the bundle in my hands. Nathan turned, his eyes narrowing. "What is that?" "Proof," I said, my voice steady. "Victor thinks he can take my girls. I will show him what I have kept all these years." The morning after the barn burned, ash clung to the air, gray and bitter, settling on my skin like a second grief. I stood on the porch, Annie asleep against my shoulder, her small breaths warm against my neck. The girls moved quietly inside, their laughter replaced by whispers, as if the fire had stolen their voices too. Nathan worked through the wreckage, salvaging what he could. Nails, a bent horseshoe, a coil of unburnt rope. His shirt was streaked with soot, his hands raw, but he did not stop. I watched him, the ledgers heavy in my apron pocket, their edges pressing into my hip. Victor Langston's note, "Still not yours. Still not safe," burned in my mind, a vow I could not ignore. A horse's hoofbeats broke the silence, steady and purposeful, coming from the road. My heart leapt, expecting Caleb or another of Victor's men. I tightened my grip on Annie, my free hand brushing the knife hidden in my sleeve. Nathan straightened, wiping his hands, his eyes narrowing as a lone rider appeared. Not a man, but a woman, tall and dark-skinned, her posture like steel in the saddle. Her boots were caked with dust, her coat worn but tailored, and her eyes held a fire that made the air feel sharper. She dismounted, tethering her horse to the fence. "I hear there is a man threatening children to make a land grab," she said, stepping toward the porch. "Is that true?" I met her halfway, Annie stirring in my arms. "Yes," I said, voice steady. "But we are not afraid of him." "Good," she replied, a faint smile breaking her face. "Fear does not win cases. Paperwork does. I am Margaret Cole, lawyer." Nathan joined us, his shadow falling across the steps. "Who sent you?" he asked, voice low but not unkind. "Judge Henry Vaughn," Margaret said. "He owes you a favor, Holt. Said you might need someone who knows how to fight in a courtroom. I used to teach school, but now I fight for mothers like you." She nodded to me, her gaze softening. "I lost my own child to a man with deeper pockets. I do not lose anymore." I swallowed, the weight of her words settling in my chest. "Victor Langston wants my girls," I said. "Says I am unfit. He has money, lawyers, men who burn barns." Margaret's eyes flicked to the smoldering wreckage. "Then we will bury him in evidence." She stepped past me, her boots firm on the porch. "Show me what you have." Inside, over cups of bitter coffee, I spread the ledgers on the table. Margaret read them with a teacher's precision, underlining passages, her pen scratching like a pulse. "Your husband's signature was altered," she said, tapping a page. The ink shifts. The language changes halfway through. "Forgery, clear as day." "He threatened to call me insane," I whispered, my hands tight around my mug. "Said he would take the girls." "He will not," Margaret said, calm but certain. "Not with these documents. He's—" "Not if I get a judge who is not in Langston's pocket." Nathan entered, dirt on his boots, sweat streaking his face. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "Character witness," Margaret said. "Proof you have provided shelter, food, stability. The guardianship forms help, but I will need testimonies from neighbors." "I do not have many," Nathan said, his voice flat. "Then find the ones you do," she replied, not looking up. "Langston will hit fast." I glanced at the girls playing quietly in the parlor. Sarah read to Lily, her voice halting but steady. Grace braided Emma's hair, her fingers gentle. Annie clutched the cedar bear Nathan had carved, her eyes bright despite the morning's weight. They were healing, finding joy in small moments, and I would not let Victor steal that. I turned to Margaret. "What can I do?" "Be visible," she said. "A mother, present, capable. The town needs to see you, not the thief they wanted to hang." I nodded, though the thought of facing those judgmental eyes again made my stomach twist. Margaret packed the ledgers, her movements brisk. "I will start drafting the case. Stay sharp." "Langston's men will not stop at fire." She was right. That night, they came again. I was washing dishes, the girls asleep, when a shadow moved outside the window. A flicker, then another. My heart stopped. I grabbed the knife from the counter, my breath shallow. Nathan was in the barn, checking the remaining tools. I crept to the door, peering into the dark. 3 figures, bandanas over their faces, torches in hand. The bells I had tied to the trees jingled faintly, a warning I had set after Caleb's visit. I opened the door, knife raised, and shouted, "Nathan!" My voice cut the night like glass. The men froze, their torches casting jagged light. Nathan burst from the barn, shotgun in hand, and fired into the air. The horses reared. One man dropped his torch, the flame hissing out in the grass. "This house is not undefended," Nathan called, stepping forward, his voice a low growl. The men did not answer. They turned and rode off, hooves crunching gravel, their shadows swallowed by the dark. Nathan lowered the gun, his chest heaving. I stood on the porch, knife still in hand, my pulse roaring in my ears. Margaret appeared behind me, her nightdress loose but her eyes sharp. "That changes the case," she said. "Intimidation." "I can use this." I nodded, but my hands shook. The girls had not woken, thank God, but Sarah's shadow stirred in the doorway, her eyes wide. "Mama?" she whispered. "Go back to bed," I said, forcing calm into my voice. She hesitated, then obeyed. I turned to Nathan. "They will not stop." "No," he said, his gaze on the horizon. "But neither will we." The next day, I found peace in small moments, a defiance against the fear. I sat with the girls in the parlor, teaching Grace to sew a patch on her smock. Her stitches were uneven, but she beamed, proud of each one. Emma drew pictures in the dust on the floor, her laughter bright. Lily sang a hymn, off-key but earnest, while Annie toddled after her, mimicking the tune. Sarah watched me, her eyes older than her years. "Are we staying, Mama?" she asked. "For now," I said, brushing her hair back. "We are safe here." She nodded, but her gaze lingered, searching for the lie. I wanted to promise her forever, but Victor's note echoed in my mind. Nathan worked outside, reinforcing the window locks, his hammer strikes steady and deliberate. He was building more than a house. He was building a fortress, and I was not sure it would be enough. That evening, Margaret sat with me at the kitchen table, papers spread before her. "The court date is set," she said. "1 week. Langston will bring everything, witnesses, forged documents, lies about your fitness as a mother." "Then we bring more," I said, my voice firm. "The ledgers, your case, Nathan's testimony." She nodded, but her eyes were grim. "He will strike before then. Men like him do not wait for judges. He will want you broken, Hannah, before you ever step into that courtroom." I leaned back, the chair creaking under me. The firelight caught the carved bear on the table, its smooth edges glowing. Nathan had made it for Annie, a small act of care that anchored me now. I met Margaret's gaze. "Let him try," I said. "I am not the woman he thinks I am." The town's eyes burned into me as our wagon rolled down the main street, their whispers sharp as gravel under the wheels. I sat straight, Annie in my lap, her small hands clutching my dress. Sarah and Grace flanked me, their faces pale but composed, while Emma and Lily pressed close, their best dresses patched but clean. Nathan drove, his jaw tight, the reins steady in his calloused hands. Margaret rode ahead on horseback, her posture unyielding, a beacon cutting through the crowd's judgment. They stared, shopkeepers, farmers, women who once shared flour with me, and murmured, "Is that her? The thief?" Holt took her in. 5 girls, imagine. I held my chin high, not for pride, but for my daughters. Today, I was not a beggar or a criminal. I was their mother, and I would fight. The courthouse loomed at the street's end, its wooden facade weathered but imposing. My heart pounded, Victor Langston's note echoing in my mind. Still not yours. Still not safe. I pushed it down, focusing on the girl's warmth against me. Margaret dismounted, her boots firm on the steps, and nodded to me. "Be visible," she had said. "A mother, present, capable." I stepped down, smoothing my skirt, and took Sarah's hand. The crowd parted, their murmurs trailing us like smoke. Judge Henry Vaughn met us at the door, his white beard trimmed, his eyes sharp but kind when they landed on Nathan. "You came a long way from nailing shutters for pennies," he said. Nathan nodded, his voice low. "This family is worth more than gold." Inside, the courtroom was small, the air thick with the scent of polished wood and ink. Benches creaked as townsfolk filed in, their curiosity a weight on my shoulders. Victor Langston sat at the front, his suit crisp, his smile smooth as oil. His eyes met mine, glinting with confidence, and my stomach twisted. He thought he had won before the fight began. Margaret set her papers on the table, her movements precise, while Nathan sat beside me, his presence a quiet anchor. The girls huddled close, Annie's cedar bear clutched tight in her hands. Judge Vaughn took his seat, his gavel sharp against the silence. "We are here to determine the custody of the Carver children," he said, voice steady. "Mr. Langston claims their mother is unfit. Mrs. Carver and Mr. Holt contest that. Let us begin." Margaret stood, her voice clear and commanding. "Your Honor, Victor Langston's claim is not about care but control. He seeks the Carver children to secure land rights using forged documents and intimidation." She presented the ledgers, her fingers steady as she pointed to the altered signatures. "These prove Langston's fraud. He threatened Hannah Carver, burned her barn, sent men to her home. This is not guardianship. This is greed." Langston's lawyer, a thin man with a nasal voice, rose. "Mrs. Carver is a thief, Your Honor. She stole bread, endangered her children through poverty. Mr. Langston offers stability, education, wealth, a proper home." I gripped the bench, my nails digging into the wood. Margaret's eyes flicked to me, a silent command to stay calm. When called, I took the stand, my hands trembling but my voice firm. "I had nothing," I said, meeting the judge's gaze. "My husband died, our land was cheated from us. I stole one loaf to feed my girls. I would do it again." But I never stopped being their mother. The room was silent, the weight of my words settling like dust. Langston's smile faltered just for a moment. The judge nodded, his pen scratching notes. Nathan took the stand next, his words spare but heavy. "They needed help. I gave it." "Why?" the judge asked, leaning forward. Nathan paused, his eyes on the girls. "Because I know what it feels like to be needed and have no one answer. They are not mine by blood, but they are mine in every way that counts." My throat tightened. Sarah squeezed my hand, her eyes bright with something like pride. Margaret closed without notes, her voice rising like a storm. "This is not about poverty or property. It is about a mother who chose her daughters over her pride, a man who gave them shelter when the world gave stones, and a man like Langston who thinks wealth entitles him to people. It does not." The judge took the papers and left the room. An hour passed, then 2. The girls fell asleep on my lap, their warmth grounding me. Margaret paced, her boots soft on the floor. Nathan stood by the window, staring at nothing, his hands clenched. My mind churned. Victor's smug face, the ledgers, the barn's ashes. If we lost, he would take my girls, twist their lives to serve his greed. I pressed my lips to Annie's forehead, whispering, "I will not let him." When the judge returned, his face was weary but resolute. He handed me a folded paper, his voice steady. "Full custody remains with you, Mrs. Carver." "The guardianship stands. No one can take them without due cause." My knees gave out. Nathan caught me, his arm strong around my shoulders. "Thank you," I whispered, tears burning my eyes. The judge turned to Nathan. "She and the children stay under your protection?" "For as long as they want," Nathan said. "Then let it be written," the judge said, his gavel final. The girls stirred, Lily blinking awake. "Did we win, Mama?" she asked. "Yes, baby," I said, holding her close. "We won." We left the courthouse in silence, the girls' hands in mine, Nathan's shadow beside us. The townsfolk watched, their murmurs softer now, some nodding with reluctant respect. In the wagon, Annie nestled against me, her bear tucked under her chin. I allowed myself a moment of relief, the weight of the judge's words a shield around us. But as we reached the ranch, a boy on horseback approached, his face flushed. He handed Nathan an envelope, then rode off without a word. Nathan opened it, his face hardening. Inside was a photograph, grainy but unmistakable. The cabin, watched from the tree line. On the back, scrawled in crude ink, "Next time I will not miss." My heart stopped. Victor had lost the law, but he was not done. I clutched the photograph, my fingers trembling, and met Nathan's gaze. He did not speak, but his eyes said what I already knew. This fight was far from over. The photograph trembled in my hand. Victor Langston's words, "Next time I will not miss," a blade against my throat. I stood on the porch, the evening air heavy with the scent of ash and cedar, my daughter's laughter faint from inside the cabin. Nathan's eyes met mine, gray and unyielding, but beneath his calm I saw the same fear that clawed at me. We had won in court, secured the girl's safety with ink and law, but Victor did not play by rules. I crumpled the note, my nails digging into my palm, and whispered, "He will not stop." "Then we prepare," Nathan said, voice low but firm. He took the photograph, tucking it into his coat, and turned toward the cabin. "We make this place a fortress." I followed him inside, my heart racing. Sarah looked up from the table, her eyes sharp, sensing the shift in me. "Mama?" she asked, her voice small. "Everything is fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Help your sisters with their knitting." She nodded, but her gaze lingered, too wise for her 12 years. I could not shield her from this. Not anymore. The next day, we worked in silence. Nathan reinforced the back wall with spare planks, his hammer strikes steady as a heartbeat. I tied more bells to the trees, their soft jingles a warning against the dark. Nathan moved his cot to the main room, sleeping across the door with the rifle beside him. I taught Sarah and Grace to check the snares, their small hands quick but cautious. Emma and Lily learned to bolt the windows, their faces serious. Annie clung to her cedar bear, watching us with wide eyes, too young to understand but old enough to feel the tension. Each task was a stitch in the armor we built, but I knew it might not be enough. That evening, I sat with Margaret at the kitchen table, her papers spread before us. She had stayed after the hearing, her presence a steadying force. "Langston is desperate," she said, her pen scratching notes. "Desperate men make sloppy choices. We can use that." "How?" I asked, my voice tight. "He sends men with torches, notes, threats. What do we have?" "Proof," she said, tapping the ledgers. "The photograph is evidence of intimidation. If he strikes again, we take it to the sheriff. Langston's money cannot buy him out of jail." I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Sheriff Ward had warned us about Caleb, but he served the town's will, not ours. I glanced at Nathan, sharpening tools under the porch lamp. His focus was fierce, but his shoulders carried a weight I had not seen before. I wanted to believe we could outlast Victor, but the photograph's shadow loomed, a promise of violence we could not ignore. 3 nights later, they came. A sound woke me. Metal against wood, faint but deliberate. Then a window shattered, glass spraying across the floor. I swept the girls from their bedrolls, my heart pounding, and crouched behind the hearth. Nathan rose like a storm, rifle raised, his silhouette stark against the firelight. A man stepped through the broken window, rifle aimed lazily, his face young, barely 25, but his eyes cold, fearless. "Drop it," Nathan said, voice steady. "Or what?" the man sneered. "You gonna shoot with all them watching?" Nathan took a step forward, placing himself between the girls and the intruder. "I will send you back in a box if you take another step." The man laughed, tilting his head. "You, Holt? Langston says you keep meddling. He will send men who do not miss on purpose." I clutched Annie, her small body trembling against mine. Sarah's hand found mine, her grip fierce. Nathan did not blink. He fired, not to kill, but close. A bullet shattered the floor beside the man's boot. In the next breath, Nathan was on him, dragging him by the collar through the broken door and into the snow. He shoved him hard into a snowbank, voice low and lethal. "Tell Langston this is not a woman he can frighten. These girls are not his to claim. I see you again, I do not miss." The man fled, coat flapping, boots slipping in the mud. Inside, the girls sat curled together, silent but unbroken. Ruth held Clara's hand, Annie's eyes wide but dry. I held them close, my breath ragged, and whispered, "You are safe." It was a promise I meant to keep. By morning, we had a plan. Nathan and I rode out with the girls, leaving the cabin under the guise of fleeing. We stayed at a mission house nearby, run by a sharp-eyed woman named Clara, who ushered us in without questions. Nathan circled back alone, hiding in the trees, watching the cabin. 2 nights later, Victor's men returned, 4 this time, bandanas over their faces, torches blazing. They tore through the barn, smashed Nathan's tools, and set fire to the tool shed, laughing as the flames rose. From his perch, Nathan watched, memorizing their faces, their horses, their path. He followed them, silent as a shadow, to a crooked house 2 valleys over, Victor's hunting cabin. The next day, he rode to town, the photograph and Margaret's notes tucked in his coat. Sheriff Ward was in his office, round and skeptical, sipping coffee. "That is a lot of claims, Holt," he said, squinting at the photograph. "I do not make claims," Nathan replied, voice hard. "I show truth. Men attacked my home, burned my property, threatened a mother and her children. I tracked them to Langston's cabin. You going to do your job, or do I drag them here myself?" Ward blinked, his cup still. Cup. "No need for that." By afternoon, with Margaret summoned by telegraph, Ward and 2 deputies rode to Victor's cabin. They found the youngest attacker, his hand bandaged from burns, his tongue loose with fear. He confessed, Victor had paid them to run me out or make me look unfit, double if they succeeded before the court's ruling. It was enough. Victor was arrested that night, his fine suit rumpled, his smile gone. News spread fast. When we returned to the cabin, neighbors who had never spoken to us nodded, their eyes warm. The girls ran through the yard, their laughter brighter, freer. I stood on the porch watching Nathan mend the broken window, his hands steady but scarred. He had fought for us, not with words, but with action, and I felt the weight of that settle in my chest. That evening, as the girls ate supper, Annie climbed onto Nathan's lap, her cedar bear in hand. She looked up at him, her voice soft but clear. "Papa, can you make me a rabbit next?" Nathan froze, his spoon halfway to his mouth. The room went quiet, Sarah's eyes wide, Grace's fork still. I held my breath, my heart caught between joy and fear. Nathan swallowed, his voice rough. "Of course, baby girl, a rabbit it is." Annie beamed, nestling against him. Sarah glanced at me, a question in her eyes. I nodded, a tear slipping down my cheek. They were calling him Papa, claiming him as theirs, and he was letting them. But as I cleared the plates, the photograph's words whispered in my mind. Next time I will not miss. Victor was gone, but men like him left echoes. I looked at my girls, their faces flushed with warmth, and prayed this peace would hold. Winter came hard, snow piling thick against the cabin, the roof creaking under its weight. I woke each morning to frost on the windows, my breath visible in the dim light. The girls slept close, their small bodies curled together like roots under a quilt. Nathan rose before dawn, reinforcing the shutters, splitting wood with a rhythm that felt like prayer. I watched him from the kitchen, my hands kneading dough, the warmth of the stove a fragile shield against the cold. Victor Langston's arrest had quieted the threats, but his note, "Next time I will not miss," lingered in my mind. a shadow I could not shake. I stood at the window each night, waiting for a knock, a letter, the next attack. Peace felt borrowed, not owned. One morning, a courier arrived, his horse steaming in the snow. He handed me a sealed envelope, no return address, and rode off without a word. My hands trembled as I carried it inside, the paper heavy as a stone. Nathan looked up from the table where he was carving a rabbit for Annie, his knife pausing. "What is it?" he asked. "I am not ready," I whispered, clutching the envelope. The girls watched from the hearth, their eyes wide, Sarah's sharp, Grace's cautious, Emma's curious, Lily's trusting, Annie's innocent. I wanted to protect them from whatever this was, but I could not hide forever. "Yes, you are," Nathan said, voice soft but certain. I opened it, the seal cracking like ice. The letter rustled in the quiet, its words official, stamped with the state's crest. I skimmed the first lines, my breath quickening, then stopping. My fingers dropped the paper. Nathan caught it, reading aloud, his voice sharp with disbelief. "After formal review of the home and consideration of your recent legal battles, this office has determined it is in the best interest of the minors to remain under your guardianship. We recommend formal adoption be considered, pending consent of involved parties." He lowered the paper, blinking. "They are not taking them." I sank into a chair, my legs unsteady. "They want us to adopt them, legally." Annie crawled into my lap, her eyes round. "Does that mean no one can take us ever again?" I wrapped my arms around her, tears burning my eyes. "Not ever." Emma stood, fists at her sides. "Even if someone says we are not a real family?" "They are wrong, baby," I whispered into her hair. "They are wrong." That afternoon, inspectors arrived. A man and a woman, coats thick, faces unreadable. They walked the perimeter, measured rooms, counted beds, their questions relentless. How many square feet per child? Are the girls receiving formal instruction? Where is their biological father? Are there known threats remaining? Nathan answered what he could, his voice calm but firm. I filled in the rest, my hands steady as I described our days. Grace's sewing, Sarah's snares, Lily's hymns, Emma's drawings, Annie's laughter. The girls were quiet, sensing the weight, but Annie offered the woman a dandelion, her smile brighter than the snow outside. The inspectors left without a word, their notebooks full, their faces blank. I sat on the porch after, staring at the road, the wagon's tracks fading in the snow. "What if we failed?" I whispered. Nathan stood behind me, his hand resting on the rail. "We did not." "They asked about schooling," I said. "We have barely done phonics." "You taught them to survive, to hope," he said. "They will learn to read in time." I nodded, but doubt clung to me. They called me unfit once. "They were wrong," he said, voice low. "You turned this place into something worth protecting." The letter came a week later, thicker than before, the seal official. I opened it with the girls around me, their breaths held. The words were clear. Adoption approved, guardianship permanent. I read it twice, my voice breaking, then pulled them close, their laughter filling the cabin. Nathan hung a drawing by the hearth, Clara's crooked sketch of us all, him tallest, labeled Papa. He did not speak, but his eyes shone, and I knew he felt it too, a wholeness we had not dared imagine. Days later, we married at the mission chapel, no fanfare, just us and the girls. Nathan wore his cleanest shirt. I braided my hair, and the girls grinned in dresses too light for the cold. Clara, the mission's caretaker, stood as witness, her Bible worn but steady. "I now pronounce you man and wife," she said, smiling. Nathan kissed me before she finished, soft and sure, and the girls cheered, scattering flower petals they had gathered from roadside bushes. Sarah turned, her eyes bright. "You look happy, Mama." "We are," I called back, my hand in Nathan's. The weeks that followed felt strange, not because anything changed, but because nothing had to. The cabin was the same. Creaking beams, wildflowers on the sills, vegetable rows sprouting green. But the weight of what if was gone. Nathan taught the girls to split wood, dull hatchet first, their giggles echoing. I sat with Annie, tracing letters in ash, her small fingers eager. We made bread from flour, not desperation, and laughed over burnt edges. The gallows faded, a scar that no longer ached but shaped how we moved. One evening, Emma asked, "Mama, do you remember when they almost hanged you?" I paused, needle still in the cloth. "Yes." "Do you think they still want to?" I set the cloth aside, meeting her gaze. "No, because people see us now. We are not just poor, not just mouths to feed. We are a family, and I am not alone." She nodded, satisfied, and ran to play. A federal clerk came days later, confirming the adoption papers. The girls offered him biscuits, Annie a dandelion. He looked at the names carved on the porch beam, the drawings on the walls, Nathan helping Emma recite a hymn, and said, "You turned this place into something worth protecting." He left, his questions few. Another letter arrived, quiet words from the county. Victor was convicted, barred from custody challenges, sentenced to 10 years. It did not erase his threats, but it let us breathe. I walked the pasture that evening, Annie asleep against my shoulder, the sun casting gold over our land. It was not much, a cabin, a garden, 6 chairs at a table, but it was more than I had dreamed. I kissed Annie's cheek, whispering, "We made it." Nathan stepped onto the porch. "Dinner is ready." "You make it?" I asked, smiling. "Nope," Sarah did. "Said you deserved to rest." I laughed, climbing the steps, the wind warm at my back. The table was set, plates filled, a jar of wild mint at the center. We folded hands, Nathan bowed his head and I closed my eyes. My prayer came easily, for the first time in years. "Thank you," I whispered, "for all we have been given, all we almost lost, all we never thought we would have." I looked up. The girls dug in, laughing. Nathan met my gaze, his smile soft, steady. We ate together, not just surviving, but living. The fire burned low, and from the heart of this home, built not from wood or stone, but from grit, grace, and second chances, a voice rang out. "Papa, come read," Annie called, her rabbit tucked under her arm. Nathan rose, turning to me. "Shall we?" I nodded. We went in together, the stars watching, the night hours